Have you spoken so much that now, even when you try, nothing comes out? Words crumble before they even touch the air. The pain echoes in a space where no one listens anymore, and maybe no one wants to. What happens to a soul when its feelings become inaudible? It all begins with a silence no one notices. That moment when you tried to open your heart, and the other looked away, replied in haste, or changed the subject as if you were just noise. It wasn't a scream. It was a soundless abandonment. Since then, the world seems to hear everyone, except you. Imagine yourself as a forgotten house in the countryside. The windows are still open, but no one passes by. The wind enters and leaves, but no one stays. Flowers still bloom in the garden, but no eyes see them. Inside, the furniture still waits for stories, still holds the gestures of who you tried to be. But it's as if every chair now screams in a language the world unlearned. Do you remember the last time you tried to say something true? Not polite or casual, but something that truly pierced your soul. Remember the feeling? The hesitation, the hope, and then the empty response. Slowly you began to speak less, then to think less out loud. And now, you feel, but don't speak. You feel, but can no longer shape it into words. You feel, but even you no longer know exactly what it is. Maybe this is it. The pain of not being heard is not just loneliness, it's erosion of self. It's becoming an echo of who you once were. But if you're still here, breathing these words, it means a spark remains. So let me ask, have you ever felt invisible, even to love itself? There comes a moment when silence stops being absence and begins to weigh heavy. Not like an empty room, but like the accumulation of everything you never got to say. Unspoken words don't vanish. They settle. First in the chest, then the shoulders, until the soul walks bent, carrying the invisible burden of a trapped vocabulary. You wake up and the day is already full of unspoken phrases. And I'm tired no one would ask about. And I need you. Too big for the moment. And I feel like I'm disappearing. No one would know how to answer. So you keep quiet. And the silence repeats. Again. And again. Until quiet becomes habit. Until habit becomes identity. The body learns. The heart slows down in conversations. The voice loses its tone. The eyes no longer ask for help. And there's a moment when everything seems functional. You smile, you give, you speak just enough. But inside it's all dust and sand. A desert no one sees because the oasis of your expressions was slowly buried by comparisons to those who always knew how to speak better, cry more beautifully, suffer in a more understandable way. Unheard pain turns into resentment, and resentment turns into withdrawal. You start hiding from yourself because looking in the mirror means remembering all that was never said. It's remembering that somewhere along the road, words began to die before being born. And now even when you try to scream, the echo never returns. If no one listens, is it still worth speaking? There is a forest inside you. In it, ancient trees guard the words that were never born. Each trunk carries a repressed feeling. Each branch whispers a desire that could never come out. This forest grows in silence, because no one enters it, not even you. But sometimes in the middle of the night you hear the rustling of these inner leaves, and you feel fear, not of the sound, but of what it might reveal. There is a voice inside you and it never left. It just withdrew, like a wounded animal. It hid in the folds of time, in the drawers of childhood, in the dark hallways of youth, in the empty alleys of conversations that never ended. And it watches, watching you smile to please, agreeing to avoid conflict, silencing yourself to keep the peace. But inside, this voice grows. Even wounded, it still pulses. It doesn't want to scream. It wants to exist. It doesn't want to convince anyone. It just wants to be held by you. The problem is that when no one listens, you learn to compare, to measure the volume of your feelings against the display of others' pains. as if there was only room for those who suffer eloquently, who turn pain into performance, tears into poetry, trauma into audience. But what happens to those who feel in the dark, to those who burn in silence? The answer does not come from outside. It comes from the moment you decide to enter your own forest, without audience, without answer, only with the lantern of a gesture, writing, singing, painting, or simply listening to yourself without shame, because this forgotten voice doesn't need to be explained. It just needs to be heard. By you first. There comes a time when silence, once a prison, becomes shelter. Not because the pain has gone away, but because something inside you has begun to change the direction of the ear. Instead of shouting to the world, you start listening inward, and you realize there is a lifetime pulsing beneath what was never said. You stop begging for attention on others' corners. Stop comparing your feelings to the grand monologues of others. You withdraw, not from defeat, but by choice. Enter the cave of the soul, and there, among walls no one else sees, you listen. Finally listen. To every forgotten sadness, every abandoned joy, every nameless rage, you sit with them, not to explain but to recognize. And suddenly, you realize they didn't want an audience. They wanted presence. Healing begins when you stop translating your pain into others' language and start honoring it in your own. Maybe in handwritten words, maybe in slow walks among trees, maybe in tears you allow to fall without apology, maybe in songs no one understands, but that echo exactly how you feel inside. You begin to rebuild your voice, not as a tool for persuasion, but as an extension of the soul. It doesn't matter if others understand. What matters is that you return to yourself. And that is the beginning of everything. Because sometimes the world doesn't listen, but the universe listens. Time listens. And above all, your own soul has always been waiting for you. There is a moment, subtle and slow, when you stop waiting to be heard and start listening to yourself with reverence. Not as someone begging, but as someone returning. Returning to the temple that has always been your body, your memory, your tired breath. In this instant, silence is no longer the end. It is the beginning of the sacred. You realize it wasn't the absence of words that hurt. It was the absence of witness. Now you are the witness. And that changes everything. You no longer need to prove you feel. You only need to feel fully. In this new space, invisibility becomes invisible sacredness. The voice that no one heard now echoes inside you like an ancient bell. Not to alert the world, but to call your soul home. Silence becomes altar, and you, despite all your wounds, are the purest offering. You begin to understand that some expressions were never meant to be understood. They were meant to be inhabited. Some pains don't need applause. They need refuge. And some feelings are not noise. They are part of the greater music that is existence. So you close your eyes, and without saying a word, you finally feel heard. By yourself, by time, by the mystery that misses you too. If this video welcomed you into a forgotten silence, write in the comments the phrase that touched you most. Share with those who also feel in the dark. And subscribe. This channel is a forest of forgotten voices returning to sing. Tonight, before you sleep, perform a simple gesture. Light a candle in a quiet corner of your home. Sit silently before it, and for 5 minutes, say nothing. Just listen. Not to the world, not to the noise, but to that part of you that never stopped feeling, even when no one else was listening. If something comes, write it down. If nothing comes, give thanks. This is the ritual. This is the return. You are not alone, and even if no one hears, your soul keeps singing. Final phrase: silence is where the soul kneels.